So what actually happens when a country goes bankrupt? Why doesn't it just shut down like a business? Who pays the price? And why does this keep happening again and again? Let's walk through it carefully. Because the answer is simpler and darker than it sounds. When people say a country has gone bankrupt, they're usually using the wrong word. Countries don't go bankrupt, they default. Default just means a government misses a debt payment, delays it, or openly says, "We're not paying." There's no global bankruptcy court for countries. No judge, no liquidation, no forced shutdown. The borders stay where they are. The flag still flies, the government keeps meeting, but something critical breaks: trust. And modern economies run almost entirely on trust. Governments borrow money constantly. They borrow to build roads, fund hospitals, pay salaries, stabilize the economy during recessions. That borrowing only works because lenders believe they'll be paid back. The moment that belief cracks, everything changes. At first, default doesn't feel dramatic. Sometimes it starts with a single missed interest payment, or a quiet announcement that payments will be restructured. Markets notice immediately. Credit rating agencies downgrade the country. That's basically a public warning label. Lending here is dangerous. Investors react fast, faster than governments, faster than voters. Money starts leaving. Foreign investors sell government bonds. They sell local stocks. They dump the currency. Not because they want to, but because they're afraid to be the last ones holding it. And when everyone rushes for the exit at the same time, prices collapse. The currency falls. That one move alone sets off a chain reaction most people never see coming, because countries don't produce everything they need. They import fuel, food, medicine, machinery. Those imports are priced in foreign currency. So when the local currency drops, everything imported suddenly costs more, sometimes much more. A country that could afford fuel last month now needs double the money for the same shipment. Food prices rise. Electricity becomes unreliable. Pharmacies run out of basic medicine. Inflation doesn't creep in. It jumps. Now zoom in on regular people. Salaries don't double overnight. Savings are still denominated in local currency, but prices are rising weekly. Fear spreads. People rush to banks to withdraw cash. They're not thinking about interest rates or bond yields. They're thinking, what if my money isn't here tomorrow? Banks can't handle that. Banks don't keep everyone's money sitting in vaults. They lend most of it out. That's how banking works. So when too many people demand cash at once, banks run out. This is called a bank run, and it's one of the fastest ways to turn a financial crisis into a full economic meltdown. Withdrawals get limited. Accounts get frozen. Some banks collapse outright. Businesses can't access loans. Payrolls get delayed. Factories slow down or shut completely. Unemployment spikes. And now the crisis is no longer abstract. It's no longer about debt charts or bond markets. It's about groceries, jobs, power outages, anger. This is the point where protests begin, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. Governments didn't lose power because they ran out of money. They lost power because they ran out of credibility. So how do countries end up here in the first place? It almost never happens overnight. One common path is simple and boring, and that's what makes it dangerous. Borrowing too much for too long. At first, debt feels harmless. Interest rates are low. Payments are manageable. Politicians love it because borrowing lets them spend without raising taxes. But debt compounds. Every year, interest piles onto interest. A larger and larger share of the national budget goes just to servicing old loans. Eventually, the government isn't borrowing to invest anymore. It's borrowing to survive. New debt pays old debt. Nothing productive is being built. Growth slows. This is a debt trap. Another major trigger is borrowing in foreign currency. Many countries borrow in US dollars because lenders trust the dollar more than local currencies. That seems fine until the local currency weakens. Now the government earns revenue in a devalued currency, but owes debt in dollars. Every percentage drop in the exchange rate makes the debt heavier. A manageable loan becomes crushing without the government borrowing a single extra dollar. Then there are shocks. Wars, pandemics, global recessions, a collapse in commodity prices. Countries that depend heavily on one export, oil, gas, minerals, are especially vulnerable. When prices crash, government revenue evaporates. Debt payments don't. Sometimes default isn't even about money, it's about politics. A new government comes in, looks at old debts, declares them unfair, corrupt, illegitimate, and refuses to pay. The math might still work, but the willingness doesn't. Either way, the result is the same: trust breaks. Once that happens, recovery becomes brutally difficult. After defaulting, countries are usually locked out of global lending markets. No one wants to lend to a borrower who just proved they won't or can't pay. So governments turn to emergency lenders. The IMF, the World Bank, groups of wealthy nations. These loans don't come freely. They come with conditions: cut spending, raise taxes, end subsidies, sell state-owned assets. This is called austerity. And inside the country, it feels like punishment. Public workers lose jobs. Fuel prices rise. Electricity costs more. Social programs shrink. Even if these reforms stabilize the economy, trust doesn't return quickly. Investors don't forget defaults easily. It can take a decade or more for a country to regain credibility. Some do recover. Some never fully do. Now here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Rich countries aren't immune. They're just different. Take the United States. The U.S. borrows in its own currency. It controls the dollar. That means, technically, it can always create more money to pay its debt. That sounds like a superpower, and it is up to a point. Because printing money doesn't make debt disappear. It just moves the cost elsewhere. Inflation, currency weakness, loss of confidence. The U.S. has come dangerously close to default, not because it ran out of money, but because of political gridlock. Debt ceiling standoffs in recent years shook markets enough to trigger credit rating downgrades. No missed payment, still real damage. Japan offers another lesson. Its debt is massive, over twice its annual economic output, but most of it is held domestically, by its own institutions, its own citizens. That structure buys stability, not immunity, because at the end of the day, even rich countries rely on trust, trust that their money will hold value, trust that politics won't sabotage repayment, trust that today's promises won't be tomorrow's excuses. And here's the quiet irony in all of this. Countries don't default because the money literally runs out. They default because belief runs out. Belief that the system is sustainable. Belief that future growth will cover today's promises. Belief that leaders are in control. Once that belief cracks, numbers stop mattering. So the real question isn't whether countries can go bankrupt. They can. The real question is how long the world keeps pretending debt doesn't have consequences, until trust finally decides otherwise.